get to wipe it clean and make another one. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. I appreciate you coming out and spending part of your morning with us. And it's also great to be back here on the Merrimack River at UMass Lowell Boathouse to conclude our Earth Week celebration by announcing a new federal investment in cleaning up our river. I'm thrilled to be joined by Mayor Sakari Chow, Matt Thorne, and I thought I see John McCone from the Merrimack River Watershed Council, and Kevin Saleh of UMass Lowell, and all of you, certainly. Each of you have dedicated so much of your careers to cleaning and preserving the Merrimack River, and I'm honored to partner with all of you in Washington to deliver the resources necessary to do it. And that's because stopping pollution into the Merrimack River is deeply personal to me. I mean, I grew up right across the river, and I remember taking walks with my family after hitting Burbeck's ice cream, and certainly spending summer nights right down here at the Lowell Heritage State Park. Later in life, going for runs to train for volleyball and basketball at Lowell High, and even at Georgetown. Eventually, training humbly for a handful of marathons. But I also remember the stories that my parents would tell my sisters and me of my grandparents choosing to settle right here in Lowell because of the mills along the Merrimack that were humming with opportunity, particularly for immigrants who had just arrived in the United States looking to build new lives for themselves and for their families. And the Merrimack River is woven into the fabric of this community, and every city that and town that it flows through. We're finally at the point now where, as a city and as a region, we recognize the need to protect it. And that hasn't always been the case, sadly. That's not only true of sewage overflows that dump hundreds of millions of gallons of wastewater into the river, but it's also true for the stormwater that's been flowing into the river for decades, containing all sorts of contaminants, things like bacteria, oil and gas, heavy metals, and certainly PFAS chemicals. And stopping this kind of pollution is essential, but it isn't cheap. And so while we continue working to deliver the unprecedented water infrastructure investments from the bipartisan infrastructure law to bolster the efforts of the city and the surrounding communities, it's also critical that we support organizations, community-led organizations like the Merrimack Valley Watershed Council, that are tracking these discharges, that are monitoring the quality of our drinking water supply and sounding the alarm about the urgency we need to have. And that's why, as Congress negotiated the most recent government funding package, I fought specifically for the inclusion of $352,000 to bolster their water quality programs here in Lowell, as well as in Methuen and in Lawrence. After all, what's dumped into the river, whether it be in Manchester or right here in Lowell, it eventually affects all of us. Now, it goes without saying, but we would not be here this morning without the hard work and dedication of each of the folks standing right to the left of me, who have prioritized this issue long before sewage was making headlines. And I met with many of them just a couple of months after I was sworn in 3 years ago to talk about cleaning up the Merrimack River, and I'm proud to say that we've made substantial progress since then. This new federal investment will ensure that the progress we've been making together continues for months and years to come. So I want to thank you all again. Now, I've lost count of how many conversations I've had with Mayor Sakari Chow over the years about preserving this river. It's so important to the Cambodian American culture here. If anyone has attended the Water Festival in the summer months, I couldn't be more thrilled to have such a champion of the Merrimack River, someone I'm honored to call a friend, serving our city as mayor. So it's my pleasure to invite Mayor Sakari Chow to say a few words.
Thank you, Congresswoman Trahan. Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful day to be here. We have sunshine. We have the beautiful Merrimack River behind us. As we all know that the river and the water is really the source of life in so many ways. We also have a little bit of wind, so we call that wind energy for today, and that's important for green energy for us. Congresswoman Trahan mentioned all the very important points of how important the waterway is for our community. It really is a source for all cleaning drink water, for recreational activities, in addition to the very popular Southeast Asian Water Festival, which draws about 30 to 40,000 people into the city every year. Along the river, we use it, the residents use it for recreations, swimming, boating, and even barbecuing a little bit during the hot summer days. It's really quick, easy access to many of the residents in the area. And as we talk about clean drinking water is very important to our community. For a city like Lowell, it's the #1 source for us. And in the past few years, when many of our infrastructure are aging, and I actually put in a motion for CSO, a report on it, for the combined sewage overflow, and that was overwhelmingly support by the council back then. And I see our former Councilor Rodney Elliott is here with us, one of the major supporter of the motion, and he also worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, so that is close to his heart. So his support of the report from the Merrimack River Watershed Council, just a plan for the future, make sure it's clean for the future generations for us to utilize. I am very happy, as Congresswoman Trahan mentioned earlier, had many conversations with her about the clean water projects in our community here, and I'm very honored that she has made it a priority for her to get over $300,000 to come to really to start the project. We're on the right track of working towards a cleaning water for us, for the city. And we could not have done it without the watershed, the Merrimack River Watershed Council, who's been very committed to make sure that our water remain clean and safe, and just working with the local government, the state government, and the federal government. It's what makes our city to have a great quality of life. So I thank you, Congresswoman, for working very hard and making clean water and having it access to everybody a priority of your administration. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Sakari. Well, thank you, Mayor. I'd now like to welcome up the person who will be spearheading the implementation of this federal investment, Matt Thorne. Matt has been the executive director of the Merrimack River Watershed Council for over 2 years, and I'm grateful for not just his tireless advocacy, but his partnership, both of which have been absolutely essential in getting us all here today. So please join Matt. Thank you.
Representative Trahan is quite honestly just getting it done. To bring our infrastructure up to the 21st century, really see 4 things that are behind all that effort. So number 1 means we have to secure the resources. We need the money. Number 2 is that money has to be meaningfully connected to local communities and actors working towards progress in those communities. And Lori has always been here shoulder to shoulder with us in the Merrimack Valley on all issues regarding the river. So number 3 is these investments in local progress have to be grounded in the context of a world that was built with a lot of inequities on racial and economic lines and environmental injustices. And number 4, investments have to be grounded in the fact that the climate is rapidly shifting. This has a huge effect on water quality because these systems that were built a long time ago aren't prepared for the kind of rainstorms that we're getting these days. So as we rebuild our country, and you're fighting so hard in DC to make a lot of progress on the resource allocation, to rebuild with green infrastructure, to restore our natural systems in the most sustainable way to take us forward. Okay, so what does this work really look like? For good reason, we latch onto a lot of buzzwords. We love buzzwords in the nonprofit world: green infrastructure and climate resilience, water quality. So what does that really look like? So first, you have to touch the thing that you want to care about. And we will in just a minute when we go down to do some water testing. So that looks like Susie and Jose, who work for the Watershed Council, their army of volunteers from communities going out at whatever hour Susie and Jose ask them to go scoop up samples and stick these funny little machines in the water so we can understand how the water's doing at all times throughout the year. Second, you have to talk to people that are affected by, in this case, the river. So that looks like weeknight public meetings, giving the community a seat at the table. Like this Wednesday night at 7 p.m., if you're from Methuen, come to the Bloody Brook and Searles Pond Resilience Plan workshop, where community members and civil engineers are going to sit down and look at green infrastructure designs and solutions to stormwater issues and flooding issues that have been super persistent in the Jackson Street area. So this also looks like folks who sit down for us on a Monday night, over 100 people for the reading of our 40-page annual water quality report. So if you're getting that invested in reading that and understanding that, then we're feeling like the connections are legitimate as we tie the community to progress and science behind water quality. And so also the work looks like mobilizing our team to chase CSOs and hot spots with rapid monitoring deployments. I believe our colleague Jose Tapia, who couldn't be here today, but last time we were meeting in Lowell, earned the nickname CSO Chaser, and has been really dedicated. It was actually a UMass Lowell alum that has been really dedicated to getting out at whatever times we need to make sure we're getting the data after combined sewer overflow events or to investigate hotspots. So this also looks like once we discover a hotspot, working with the municipality, with Mass DEP, and with EPA to best zero in on the source of the pollution and then how we're going to fix it. So lastly, just to put a little more concreteness to the words green infrastructure, that looks like rain gardens, bioswales, permeable pavement, street trees, restoration of native habitat. It looks like old hazard dams that are damaging water quality and causing persistent flooding, getting removed when it's time for them to go. These are all the tangible projects that are going to happen over the next bunch of years when we do really good watershed planning and work hand in hand with municipalities to identify the biggest problems. So lastly, I just want to give a huge debt of gratitude to the Congresswoman and her team for getting behind local water systems and behind the Merrimack River, which is a resource we really have to respect and take care of. So, thank you all.
Well, thank you, Matt. I'm sure you could talk for days about how this looks on a day-to-day basis, and we appreciate folks who are getting their hands dirty on a daily basis to make sure that the cleanup and the safety of our river is at the forefront. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to invite our host for this morning's event, Kevin Soleil, to say a few words. In his role as Assistant Director of Outdoor and Bicycle Programs at UMass Lowell, Kevin manages the Boathouse and helps students get outside and enjoy the many outdoor opportunities our city and our region have to offer, this Merrimack River certainly included. So please join me in welcoming Kevin.
All right. So I want to shout out to Kate too, who was the actual Boathouse manager. And it's nice to have lots of people on our team for the campus recreation. And speaking of Jose, he was here as a rower. So it definitely has a good connection to the river. So yeah, here at the Boathouse, the Bellegarde Boathouse, Campus Rec hosts the Kayak Center. We have rowing teams from UMass Lowell, Lowell High School, the Merrimack River Rowing Association, so a public rowing entity as well. We host the National Park Service and the classroom here with the Songus Industrial History Center that does tours for school-age children and water testing as well. We recently added a slip for the Massachusetts Environmental Police, who've been a great presence on our river, helping us out all summer long. So together we help thousands of people enjoy the waters of the Merrimack River every year. Throughout the watershed, there are other entities like ours that do the same, and I believe that there's potential for significant amount more. A lot of opportunities still to come. When people have a direct and positive experience with nature and a natural place, in this case our river, the capacity to care about it and care for it increases. We often offer sunset paddles, evening tours, taking people out on the river, and one of the common experiences people have is just this one of like, wow, this is a different place than the city. This is something special. This feels like a world away. The people experience this freedom, nature. I mean, just enjoying these birds behind me. They have some risk. They have some exposure. Their creativity turns on. They have fun. We have a biology class. Kate was out with them yesterday, examining river samples for biodiversity. We have, gulls and geese and swans, blue herons, hawks. We've seen bald eagles out here. It's been great. The list goes on. For many folks, this is their first experience with such a thing, and it can be deeply personal in the benefits that it offers, and it can also, like we've talked about, it offers benefits for the city, for water, for drinking water. Everybody in the community benefits socially, environmentally, and there's economic benefits as well. So a couple of quick anecdotes I want to share. Sometimes where people are out there, folks ask, is the water safe to swim in? Can I swim in it? They're excited. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's so good, And then I follow a lengthy conversation about CSOs, possible other pollutant sources. And you can see that the excitement drained from their face is replaced with concern. And they well, is it safe now? And I'm like, probably. So I think that, if we stop this conversation there, for the rest of the paddle, their affect is notably different. We also run river cleanup programs, and so we bring students in kayaks and canoes to the other side, and we obtain a generous helping of marine debris, plastics, styrofoams, etc. And this is followed by discussion of, so we have a great feel-good moment, a service project, and then we talk about the pollution challenges, the large-scale human problems, the wastewater infrastructure, plastics production, stormwater runoff, and then, it seems really overwhelming and above them a lot of times. These are all the solutions in the realm of governmental action and large-scale community cultural change. In both of these cases, though, we always finish with, but here's how things are going to get better, are getting better currently from things like this, and here's how you can help. And that's kind of where those people like Jose come in. So when people have a direct positive experience with nature or a natural place, their capacity to care about it increases. They care for a place, they work to improve it, they share it, positive feedback loop happens, and then over time with the right leaders in place, a really dramatic change can come, and a place can be fantastic changes. When it's better cared for, it's more enjoyable for us all to come back time again. So this funding will help more people get out and experience, the volunteers that you're going to have sampling the water, more people, we're going to gather some data, and ultimately is going to help to make this place what that vision in the future we could see as a fantastic resource for all of us, more so than it already is. So I want to thank the people here, Congresswoman Trahan, the leaders in the Merrimack River Watershed Council, the city, for their work towards making the Merrimack a better resource for the people, plants, and animals. Definitely they benefit too of the region. And it's come a long way. It certainly has a long way to go. So I look forward to being part of the solution and part of the positive progress. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Kevin. we want Kevin to be able to answer that question definitively when your folks are out on the river, that it is that it is safe to swim in and safe to drink. And it's not lost on me at all right now that not only are we announcing this $352,000 so that the Merrimack River Watershed Council can do their great work that they've so committed themselves to in keeping our waterways monitored and safe. But we're also standing right in front of the Rourke Bridge, which we recently announced is going to be replaced as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Yes. And over $1 billion is coming to Massachusetts to clean up CSOs that have plagued the Merrimack River for so long. And so we are essentially ending these decades of federal disinvestment in our infrastructure, and we're actually making sure that we're building back a better country, so that everybody feels feels the impact of that investment, and no community like Lowell or Lawrence or Methuen is going to be left behind in that. So couldn't be prouder to work with folks here on the ground. We've got incredible partners with the university, the city, the Merrimack River Watershed Council, and so many other advocacy groups locally here who have been sounding the alarm and really making sure that the money is steered right to this place. So thank you all for being here and making this achievement possible. I would appreciate if we could just grab a quick photo, and then I'd like to welcome all of you to join us as we have a water testing demonstration. Awesome, thank you.
Our water quality monitoring program consists of basically two parts. One part, we're looking at bacteria in the river. We test for 2 types of bacteria. And then the other part looks at chemical and physical parameters. So things like temperature, salinity, conductivity, total dissolved solids, which kind of tell us about the health of the river. So the first method is pretty simple. We basically take one of these sterile bottles, you wear gloves, and you fill it up, label it, and put it in a cooler, and it ships off to the lab. Okay. The other part, you can use either these meters or those meters to measure the different chemical physical parameters. So
what do we want to do first?
Yeah.
This one. So you have to wear gloves to do it, really?
Yes. So the gloves both protect you from the river as well as the sample from you. So since we know that at times there can be high bacteria concentrations in the river, we all wear gloves, but also we want to make sure that the sample only has the bacteria from the river, nothing that might be on your hands or that, is in the environment in general. So yes, this is just here so nothing blows away.
One glove is okay, or both gloves?
Both is good, yeah. We'll do it the real way.
I should have been a scientist.
The exact process that our volunteers go through, we actually have a site right here, not at the Boathouse, but just down the way a little bit, that one of our volunteers visits regularly. So, all right, so then you can take off the plastic seal that's on the top there. Yep. Great.
I can hold the trash or whatnot.
I'll stick it in my pocket. Thank you. And then go ahead and fill it up with the water. You want to get it kind of close to the top of the line.
Top of the line. Ready?
Oh, you want to do it at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A twofer.
All right. Fill it up.
Oh, perfect. Perfectly on the line.
Nice.
So I didn't lose my little white tablet.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Okay. We didn't
Great.
fall in.
And then we can stick them in the cooler, and then we would ship them off deliver them to the lab. We use the EPA lab, so they are great partners of ours. All right, that's step 1. Step 2 is to use the handheld meter. So this part you don't have to get so deep. We have these nice long cables, so you can drop that right into the water there.
Just drop it in. Yes.
And then this will be a test of how well calibrated our meters are. We can compare what you are each reading. So if you want to hold that one there, you want to give it a minute to stabilize.
So does it matter? Do you get a different read if you go deeper versus more shallow?
So our sampling process is just right around the surface. The goal of our program is really to understand kind of the pollutants in the water and how they might affect people who are using the water for recreation. So people are usually right around the surface. That's the water we want to
Is the
Yeah, I
depth
think
is
you're all right.
22.3? Is it the top right? That's
So the top right is dissolved oxygen. That's an indicator really for wildlife, kind of shows how suitable it is. Very well oxygenated. Yeah. Well, looks like these are. So it takes a few minutes for the water to kind of stabilize, for the meter to stabilize.
What is that number? The bottom left?
That's the percent of oxygen.
Oh, okay.
Although it looks like it's rapidly decreasing. It's kind of an unrealistic number. So they're 150%. The top left is the temperature. So we're around 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. Yeah, still chilly. The next one is conductivity, which means they're both pretty close. So conductivity is a representation of the ions that are dissolved in the water. So minerals and different things can put ions into the water that then conduct electricity. So the more ions that are dissolved into the water, the more minerals and other things that are in the water, be natural or unnatural, salts from the roads, stuff like that.
So big numbers.
Not necessarily. Every river kind of has its own range. So big numbers can be normal in some places, depending on your ecosystem. Total dissolved solids is the next one. That's kind of a representation of all the stuff dissolved in the water, not just the ions, but any dissolved solids. And then the next one is salinity, so the amount of salt in the water. So not much salinity, which is good.
I'm surprised to see how the numbers are very similar. It's a very
Yeah,
accurate, it's a very
well, I
accurate
just
measurement.
calibrated them today, so I was hoping they would be very accurate. So that's it. Great work.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We'll spare you filling out this data sheet and driving to the lab.
Thank you so much.
Right.
That was fun.
Rinse and repeat all year.
Yeah.
Every other week.